What is going on, everyone? Welcome back. We're having a kegger. Just
Come
kidding.
on.
Welcome back to the Trademark. We are super excited. We've got a really, really good episode lined up for you all today. We've got our guest Ray Seggern. Did I get it right?
You
Was the
You
did it.
did,
execution
man.
flawless?
Thank you. And
Let's
and Eric,
go.
I have a lifetime of experience of people pronouncing it 100 different ways. So even if you hadn't got it perfectly, though you did, don't take it personal. I don't take it personal.
Love it. Well, we've got a lot of awesome topics to chat about today. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Step into the Trademark, your go-to podcast for everything marketing in the trades. Hosted by award-winning industry marketing experts Sarah Gerardo from Remarketable and Eric Thomas from Rival Digital. Together, we're here to unite the worlds of trades and marketing, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from the heart of the industry. Whether you're a trade professional, a marketing expert, or somewhere in between, this is the place for you. Listen in as we're here for the big ideas, the game changers, and the everyday successes. Because at the Trademark, we're with the trades and for the trades.
It's like a dance party. It's a dance party in here. What?
It is a dance party. I needed something catchy, right? I was like, I'm not going with the, normal podcast structure.
Love it.
That's not us. So Ray, we're super excited that you're here with us today, and we are going to be talking about a lot of stuff. But the icebreaker question that I really want to know is, what was it like working with me?
What was it like working with you at Service Champions? Well,
Yeah.
That's where we first met. And so I'll tell you, Service Champions obviously is a very special company. In my story, it remains the largest company that I had an active hand in helping develop the brand. And I remember those days fondly, Sarah, but you just moved on to bigger opportunities too quickly. So, the actual amount of time that we spent together when you were the marketing director for Service Champions in the Bay Area there, and you guys retained us, Wizard of Ads, me specifically, to help build the radio and TV. And those were great times, man. And I'll stand on that work. Elliot, the video guy, I hired him last weekend, literally. God is my witness. I hired him last weekend to shoot some video for me up there for a documentary film that my company's working on. So a lot of good relationships there. Obviously, Kevin Comerford's a special person in my life. And I remember, when we came on and got started up there, if you'll remember, I was supposed to be in Pleasanton on March 17th of 2020 to start the adventure, but your beloved state shut down the world. They were the first, California shut everything down, that little COVID thing.
Yeah.
So I remember getting to know you, obviously now, but we had crossed paths a little bit, I feel like, even before then, maybe at a rapport graduation. But as far as, the memories of working with you and Service Champions, those were great times. That was fun. And it was real interesting because we had to do it all remotely.
Yeah, we had to. So COVID shut us down. We were all going to go visit Wizard of Ads.
That's right.
And literally our flights were canceled that day. And so we had to introduce our brand to a branding agency just via phone calls. It was the most interesting and dynamic time that I have ever experienced. But that's the cool part about it. And we've continued our relationship through rapport and just in general. And it's been so awesome. And Elliot is the best. Elliot really is. The Royal Rooster is a great media company out there. So FYI, if you need and I found them on Fiverr, just so you know.
Is that right?
I did. I did.
That's great.
Everyone's like, Fiverr doesn't work. And I'm like, oh no, I have found some of the best designers, the best video production people. But what I really want to do is start with sharing your story. So the story of the brand guides and how it works with Wizard of Ads and what you guys do to help out different companies and just give me the rundown of who you are.
Sure. So I graduated from University of Texas in Austin, where that's my hometown, Gillette Elementary, Georgetown High School, UT. graduated in 95 with a degree in radio, TV, film. So I ran radio stations and was on air for a good many years before 2004 was when one cruddy radio gig after another. Radio had changed a lot to where it really wasn't a way to be able to find a financial path forward unless you're like the top 1% of DJs or, in the corporate structure of like an iHeart at the time, it's called Clear Channel. I didn't like the ways that the broadcast industry was going. So it was the middle of the night, 2004. I came across monster.com. I came across this ad for Wizard of Ads, entry level copywriter, no whiners apply here. It's an interesting story how I got the job. But that's how it all started for me was being hired by Roy Williams, the founder of Wizard of Ads, to be one of his writers. And from there, he was building this network of partners, which is really more this loose fraternity of really, it's a really eclectic group and really interesting. And over the 18 years that I've been a Wizard of Ads partner, that organization has gone through different seasons, and I can share a little bit about that. Some of the interesting folks in that realm, a lot of whom are very well known in the trades these days as well. But so Brand Guys actually was born out of an opportunity that I had with, it's now called Certain Path. At the time, it was Success Group International. And, I started out as a Wizard of Ads partner before I cooked up Brand Guys as a wraparound brand for what I do. And one of my first clients was Tim Gallagher up in Chico. And then because of the success with them, Bell Brothers in Sacramento hired me. And then we did some really neat things with them. And then those two became four. And then it was in 2012, Brian Leach from Service Legends in Des Moines, Iowa, was the guy up on stage who was winning the awards that year. I forget what it's called. Service Company of the Year, whatever the hardware was. And Rebecca Castle, who was then the president of SGI, and now she leads up the investor group that owns the Affinity Group. She leaned into Brian and said, "What are you doing that's so special?" And he goes, "Well, you should talk to my brand guy down in Texas." And so at the time I was PT Barnuming my way around. If I could rent out a Cabela's meeting room or whatever and partner with Radio Group and get some business owners, that's how I would get my clients, right? And on that day in October of 2012, I had rented out the Denver Improv Comedy Club and had 30 or 40 business owners in the room. And so based on a conversation with Rebecca, she brought her leadership group, which at the time included Paul Riddle and Eric Spence and one other guy whose name's escaping me. But she flew in and watched us I had 4 Wizard of Ads partners with me, and we did our day-long branding seminars. And at the end of the day was when she and I cut a deal for me to become a sustaining resource to SGI. And so what happened out of that was in March of 2013, we were on the main stage at Caesar's Palace, 1,000 business owners in the room. And that's when Brand Guys really took off. And the reason why I settled on Brand Guys is I didn't have the authority to speak for 70 different Wizard of Ads partners, and certainly not for Roy Williams, our founder. So that's where Brand Guys was born. And for those 11 years between 2013 and 2023, I was the go-to brand resource for that affinity group, and that's what really cemented me as going from doing well in the trades, and maybe half or so of my clients were HVAC or plumbers or roofers or whatever. Starting with 2013, I exclusively devoted myself client-wise to the trades.
And so like now you are an author, and you also own part of a HVAC company or a company, business, right? Like, so you have a lot going on. So tell us about, like your evolution is outstanding. And, but the book, like, tell us about how you wanted to become an author and what made you want to start writing.
Sure. So my co-author on the book is Monica Ballard, and she and I, as part of our engagement with SGI, we wrote a column for their Compass magazine every month. So after a few years, Monica came into my office and plunked this book down on my desk called Onward and Upward, which is a phrase that I had used, right? It's just kind of like, one of my little catchphrases, right? And there's this book that says Onward and Upward, Rocket Fuel for Your Business, Ray Seggern. What is this? She goes, you're a published author now. And what she had done is she had taken some of the articles that I had written and compiled them into this little 12-chapter pamphlet, really is more. I mean, it's very, very thin little book, right? Very homemade. So it was born out of that we, we published over 100 articles on that for Compass before Compass went out of the way and just became a podcast, and they ceased publishing it, the Compass magazine. So we had plenty of fertile material for No Place Like Home services to sort of sculpt the book out of that. And obviously we throw a Wizard of Oz motif on it. The cover obviously is the yellow brick road going up to the Emerald City, but you've got tradesmen working on the Emerald City. So that was fun. And obviously the chapters through there follow the journey of Dorothy in the way we lay out the book. So that's how I became a semi-serious author, semi being the important qualifier there, guys. But, I always enjoyed doing public speaking. So 2012, the other thing that was going on right before SGI was I had an opportunity to do a TEDx talk in San Antonio, and that was fun to do. And what's weird is between the content and the speaking, I just got busy with so many clients that now is the time where it was really during COVID when I was like, well, can't be going out, on the road much. So that's when I really made the commitment that I wanted to double back around, be a serious author and get back to getting on stage a little more. And so where it goes from here, one of the chapters in No Place Like Home Services is about story and culture and experience. And that's my next book, which I've already written 80,000 words. Now I'm in the process of just sculpting it together between now and Christmas to tee that up for a release next year.
That's a lot of words.
It's a lot of words, Eric.
That's a lot of words.
It's too many.
So
it's too many words.
I got so much respect for you.
Thank you, buddy.
Man, I'm in the process of putting out a book, and I think it's 40,000 words, and it has whooped my ass. Just getting it across the finish line is like it's tough. A lot of people don't talk about how tough it is, like getting a book out there.
Yeah. So I don't have the discipline to sit down at the keyboard like. Some people are more introverted and they look inward for their ideas and they sit down and I need to talk things into existence. So what I found the way for me to work best was a friend of mine, Chad Swyatt. Well, in the case of No Place Like Home Services, it was Monica Ballard, who was my muse, okay, and collaborator and instigator and enabler and all those things. But for story and culture and experience, Chad Swyatt is a very talented journalist in Austin. So I put him on retainer and we just carved off blocks of time here and there where I would just talk the ideas into existence and he would then sculpt them into prose and then I would edit them and go back and forth. And that's how that's the only way I could do it. It's just, I totally empathize with you about the kick. Like, so we've all got so much going on and we've got business to run and this and that. And then none of us I didn't have the luxury to say, hey, nor would I want to really walk away from everything else in my life just to be a full-time author. It's just one of the urges or the itches that I want to scratch, and so, finding the time to do it is definitely tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree. I am working on just a fun book that I created.
Okay.
And I'm like, did I just write this for myself? Maybe I shouldn't give it to anybody.
Well, it's interesting. I believe that as artists and creators, to think is to create. That's a good rapport wisdom right there, Sarah, right? And, sometimes it begs the question, is it just something inside of us that needs to get out? And if we create it for ourselves, the people in the world who it will resonate will find it. I believe that. And sometimes the worst thing I think we can do is put too much into creating to satisfy other people, even though there's obviously a component of that obviously we know who the audience for No Place Like Home Services it would be people bootstrapping a business into existence who want to figure out how does branding work into this, and are there some specific formulas for marketing that I learned along the way that would help people? Of course, but really it's just me needing to get my ideas out there. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's why I was like, oh, well, a scalable way to do this is a podcast. And then, right. And so I was like, let's start there. And then, yeah, writing a book is definitely everyone, ask me like, when's your book going to come out? And I'm like, you know what? I don't know. But thank you for that idea.
It's interesting, Sarah, because you and I are kindred souls, spirits in this regard that, just I'm speaking for me now. I mean, having a lot of interest on a good day is I get to have this eclectic variety of things that nurture my creative soul. On a bad day, it looks like shiny object syndrome, where it's like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. And then I can exhaust myself. And I'll give you a great example. I started a podcast with another Wizard of Bad's partner called The Nuclear Family Business, because family businesses really interest me, right? And we recorded 8 or 15 episodes somewhere in there, but we never really quite got it off the ground. And so it's kind of just sitting in this holding pattern. It's like, is this something that we're going to really commit to? Or is it just something we did a little bit and then, it doesn't have so I don't know, but tell me about your book. I want to hear about Sarah's book.
Well, okay. So when I'm out in the world traveling, I have been meeting just the most beautiful people, and they are in forms of Uber drivers. They are in forms of, contractors. They are I talk to everyone that I can to kind of get the idea of, I just love people. Right. And I want to hear their stories. And a lot of them, I'm also an empath. So a lot of them will just strike a conversation, or I'll strike a conversation, and it'll get really deep really quickly, even in Ubers. Right. And so I write them letters of appreciation and gratitude, and for sharing their stories with me. And it's not really telling them about their stories so much, because I want to keep that safe, because I don't tell it's not my story to tell, but my perception of their story, and just the immense gratitude that they have been a part of my healing journey. And so, yeah, I have a bunch of letters to a bunch of random people, and I was going to make that a book.
I love that idea. My client and friend, Lynn Tomasek, she and her sister and brother own Brothers Plumbing, Heating, and Electric. The brothers were her dad and uncle, and we've branded them as the sisters from Brothers. But Lynn is an amazing human being, and she gets up every day. She's got this ridiculous, insane morning routine, but one of them is writing a letter of gratitude every single day of her life to somebody.
I love it. And it means so much. It brings it all back into perspective, right? Of what is your purpose? Why are you here? But how can I, tell the world of all these beautiful people that are out there? And I don't know. I'm still thinking about it. I have everything structured. While I was away in Florida, I put together a couple of different pages. And so, but really, it's a next year on my vision board, right? I have to plan it out. But what
great book?
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be short, right? It's not going to be 5,000 letters. I'm like, here's 2, and digitally.
So there you go.
Yeah, most definitely.
I've turned the tables. I'm interviewing you guys now. I don't know if you noticed. Eric, what's your book about?
My book is very simple. It is 12 chapters, and it is effectively it's a step back for folks reading it, and it's really kind of a very simple how to do marketing type of book for home service companies. And it's not in the weeds about tactics, but it's kind of teaching them about kind of the core competencies and fundamentals of marketing, because I feel like a lot of business owners don't know all that stuff. They're technicians turned business owners.
Sure.
They don't know about, consumer research and, user behavior and buying behavior and, how to create a marketing plan. It's just, SEO, got it. Oh, PPC,
Right.
got it. So it's really kind of like my goal with it is to just be like, to help remove some of the anxiety of marketing, to just be like, hey, at the end of the day, marketing is two things. One, get people. Two, get people to do something. And that's really all it is. And it's two parts. The first part of the book is get people, and it kind of teaches you how to attract people into your corner. And then the second part of it is how to get them to do something once you've, kind of acquired some folks that are interested. Yeah. So
I'll read that book too. I'll read that book also, Eric.
it currently, thank you. It currently doesn't have a title, but it's done. So we're working on it.
Right on, man. Congratulations.
Get people to do something. Thank you.
No small feat, man. Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks. It's tough though.
Get people to do something.
Get people to do something.
I mean, it could be like, that could literally be your title.
It could be called "Don't Rush the CTA." That's what people are just like, bye.
Yeah.
Let's put that in ChatGPT and see what comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is, like, I read No Place Like Home Services, and like, I love the book because it has so many great philosophies behind it. But what was your favorite part of writing it? And I'm going to read one of the parts that is one of my favorites. But what's your favorite?
Thank you. Oh, wow. So obviously, I mean, if you make me pick one thing out of the book that is my main jam, it's going to be story and culture and experience, because that is, you talk about the skinny part of the branch, and all the philosophies we want to live by of, all armor facing forward and let's go. Right. So story and culture and experience is the next thing for me that goes from, elevating my game as an author. This book is written a lot more in the style of like a Malcolm Gladwell. There's long form, flowing essays about specific case studies and examples. So it's a little bit different for me, but that's the thing for almost 10 years now that has been a big part of my life's work. So I would pick that. From a tactical standpoint, I'm very proud of the thing that I created, the 4-part plan for a home service company planning their marketing budget. And I don't know how anybody would do it any differently than that. So I'm proud of that I've never seen anybody do it that way. And my clients through the years who we have done that with find it very instructive. The 4 parts are that you start with what are our ironclad commitments. So back in the days, think of a Yellow Pages contract where you are locked into that contract, or maybe an airport sign or whatever. So that's category 1, quadrant 1. And then quadrant 2 is things that we do over a long time horizon that we could stop doing if we wanted to, but generally we find them to be effective. So we slot those in second. The third thing we look at is what are the things we used to do that we no longer do. And then the fourth quadrant is if we could do anything under the sun marketing wise, like go buy our own blimp or put an ad in the Super Bowl or whatever, just dream big. And that tapestry, if you get all 4 of those on the whiteboard, it really puts it all in front of you of the different things you might. And obviously you start to figure out what percentage of sales are going to go towards marketing. And then, I call it air, land, and sea because there's so many veterans and engineering types that I met who run companies in the trades. The air is the Air Force, radio and TV, and the sea is where the surfing happens. So that's the Navy, right? And then land is the boots on the ground or the Army. And so that's the way I divvy them up. And so that's probably
really
those
cool.
would be my 2 choices, Sarah, in terms of my favorite parts of the book.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Mine was, and it's not just because you were talking about Kevin, it was chapter 7, which is story, culture, and experience, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And on page 78, you said part of what separates habit and routine from ritual is purpose. And if your employees and technicians understand why doing or saying something a certain way is important, that action or response is elevated thanks to thought and effort. Kevin Comerford of Service Champions calls it run the play. And it's just when it was called Run the Play, and it was seeing what we could develop for for our technicians, it was very structured process of here's a guide to do your job. And I know a lot of people, are sometimes intimidated by guides to do their job and processes and systems. But when you follow the process wins. And I think like that's the really important thing. And that was just, one of my favorite quotes is like, that is your purpose. Like, this is your habit. This is your ritual that you create, and you can win. It's all in your mind. And so I just thought that was really cool. But who are the thinkers, artists, or business leaders that have influenced your approach to branding and creativity?
That's such a good question. So I would say, I think we all have things to teach one another, and we all have things to learn, for starters. And I've held on to that forever. So I think, so obviously I enjoy a lot of the same thought leaders that through the years. So Malcolm Gladwell is somebody who I mentioned earlier, who I just like the way he looks at the world. I'm real into, like right now, I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozy and Cody Sanchez, and Dan Martell's a friend of mine actually from back in the day, who I first met when I was doing business up in Canada. Those guys are doing some neat things right now that I like a lot. But really, if I was going to answer the question honestly, I've learned the most from Roy Williams and the other Wizard of Ads partners, some of who came way before me and some of who have come after me. Because again, I believe we all have things to teach one another, and we all have things to learn. And I can't understate this, and I can't overstate this, excuse me. The only reason I'm good at this thing called the trades and home services is because I got lucky and got some really smart clients who taught me the business. And it started with Gallagher and the Bell brothers, and then it was Brian Leach, and then here comes Dave Snell, and of course Kevin Comerford, and just on and on and on. And then I've mentioned Lynn Tomasek and Scott and Stacy Feller. It's like my clients aren't just people who I have a financial relationship, but I care deeply for them, and it's a degree of love that's bigger than just a business relationship, and it's even bigger than just a mentorship or learning thing. So that relationship, those relationships are huge for me.
Yeah,
for real.
most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that, because like you have to learn from others, right? And a brand, getting to know someone's brand is so personal. It's their baby. It's something that they love, and you don't want to go in and be like, well, that logo, not my favorite.
Well,
right?
I'll tell you. So the Roy Williams, if you're going to pick one person who gave me the ammunition to be good at this thing that I've become good at, it's Roy. And the very first chapter of Roy's very first book in the Wizard of Ads trilogy, it's the 9 secret words. And the 9 secret words are: the risk of insult is the price of clarity. And that is literally telling somebody their baby is ugly. Gary Vaynerchuk, one of my favorite books of his is 12 and a half. And the half in 12, it's the 12 components of emotional intelligence that we need to succeed as leaders in business. 12 and a half is kind candor. And it's, you have to be candid. You have to offer candor to the people in your life and in our organizations, but you have to do it with some kindness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm always very transparent, right? I'm like, look, I'm going to read you the data as kind of like an overview of a Rain Man style approach. And it's not something that you're going to love to hear, but it is just like how I'm going to read it. And they're like, what? And I was like, it could be good. It could be bad. You don't know what's going to come out of my mouth because I don't know your business. And so I'm like working to interpret this through data. And so they just stare at me for a second. But then in the end, like we develop a strong bond because it's me being me as authentically as possible with them. And I think like that's what people are looking for, is for you to show up as a human and be like, this is just how we're going to be honest with each other. Right.
So as you say that, I love that. So it gets me thinking about, and you asked about this earlier, I can connect the dots here. So the history of Brand Guys is interwoven with the history of the Wizard of Ads partners. So Roy Williams is our founder, right? And he published those best-selling business books. The first one was New York Times bestseller. Second was Wall Street Journal Business Book of the Year. Those came out right at the turn of the century. And at that time, Roy was creating the Wizard Academy, which is our 30-acre campus in Austin. He was also building the partners. Roy didn't want a big monolithic ad agency where he was at the top and had a bunch of employees running around. So there's this highly charged, very eclectic and interesting group of partners who we each run our own company. So when I became a partner in 2006, after 2 years of working for Roy, there was this first wave, the original 12 partners who, you think of the disciples automatically, but I'm thinking like Dave Young, Michelle Miller, Craig Arthur from Australia. I learned so much from those guys coming in. They really took me under their wing. And then there was the second wave of partners that I was a part of, and also in there would have been like Tom Waynick and Tim Miles, who've done great things in the trades. And we were the guys that really went out and started bought dozens of home service companies into the Wizard client fold. And I learned from all those guys along the way. And then now there's this third wave coming along, which includes my dear friend Ryan Shute and Steven Semple and Kristen McTorbay, and really smart guys now that are taking us in some whole different directions. So whether they were the people who came before me, that's the easy stuff, right? Yeah, they took me under their wing and they taught me. But what's interesting to me is these people who I mentored a little bit are now teaching me stuff. So again, we've all got things to teach one another. We've all got things to learn.
Yeah. I love that. And I love Wizard of Ads because, like I've had Ryan Shute at some conferences as Steve, and I love the philosophy behind it because you're known for pushing creative boundaries, right? And like not a lot of branding companies will push those boundaries. And like, how do you keep that imagination? Like, how do you keep these creative juices flowing? How do you push boundaries for the home service industry? And where do you see that going, in the years to come when it comes to branding, when it comes to setting themselves apart in the industry?
Wow. Great question. So a couple of answers pop into my head. So there is just sort of the big picture, and then there's the tactical logistical. So let me take the big picture first. Not resting on my laurels is the biggest thing, and constantly challenging myself, is for me personally the thing that has to keep the fires stoked inside. And there's things I've learned along the way that keep the sword sharp, I guess, right? But at a tactical level, in terms of actual brand building, the two biggest killers are cliches and category speak. So one of the things I came up with a long time ago is our internal shorthands, but I call it the Mad Lib test. So if you guys are ever like as a kid had to be on some cross-country trip where you filled it, hey, put a noun here and an adjective here, right? And it's like if you take somebody's ad, right, and you strip out your adjectives and your this and that and plug somebody else's name in, friendly, helpful staff. We're a local company in business for 28 years. It's just so cliche, right? And if your ad works for the company across the street, it's not a good ad and it's not a good brand. So what we have to look for is what's really unique and true and in the heart of the founder, and then woven into the culture of the company. So in story and culture and experience, the culture part's what's interesting to me is what can we hold a mirror up to? Because all advertising is either a fairy tale or it's a mirror. It's either something, if it's a fairy tale, then it's just the wacky creatives in Austin made it up. And here, go put this costume on and hope it works for you. Well, that doesn't really work all that well anymore. What we're looking for is what can we hold a mirror up to? So a great example, one of the biggest Wizard of Ad success stories is Gettle, right? Goettl. Keep you cool, but it's hard to spell, right? Mm-hmm. And that origin story ad that Roy created for Ken Goodrich is about Ken as a boy holding the flashlight for his dad, right? And the Gettle Iron Horse air conditioner, right? Or furnace. And what he learned from that, he tells that amazing story. And that is Ken's story, obviously. But then in the hands of a master ad writer, like, the greatest who ever lived, Roy Williams, it becomes this this work of genius that I actually heard on the radio here in Las Vegas the day before yesterday in the freaking Uber driving here to the Encore, right? And it's like, it occurs to me. And then, when I look at companies, I've got a chance to do my spin, whether it's Brothers in Denver or working with Kevin and you guys at Service Champions through the years, that's where the convergence, right, of a really thoughtful, intentional founder that can weave that into the organization, right, and then collaborate with a storyteller like me. That's where I believe the magic happens. But it's a collaboration. It's not hocus pocus or make believe or fairy tales. As much as, hey, we've heard all the Harry Potter jokes and the wizardry and all that. Really, it's far less wizardy alchemy, and it's really more just honest to goodness collaboration that's rooted in creativity and common sense, I believe.
Yeah. So many good things that you just said there. Like, I want to pull them all apart. Gettle is my favorite. So, like, I talked to Gen about his brand the first time I met him, right? And I was like, oh, like, just being a marketer that I am, and so we had some really great conversations. My question is like, how do brands evolve? So there's a legacy story, right? But how do you take a legacy story and keep evolving that brand, right? Because and I told Ken this. I was like, I held a flashlight for my dad, right? Like, like, my kids hold their phones for me if I need like a flashlight. Like, where does this story transcend? Like, how is it relational to the person that is today?
Yeah, and where you up the ante on that is what happens when, and there's 10 different answers to this, by the way. What happens when the story is no longer really the province of Kevin Comerford or Ken Goodrich, but the private equity companies that bought their companies, right? So what happens then? And so obviously Wizard of Ads has a lot invested in the Gettle story. And it's interesting because Gettle is in Austin and they're in markets where I have clients like San Antonio. And so they're around now in lots of markets. And tracking that, I've seen there have been times where I look at what they've done and it's like, well, you guys just really are missing the point here. You're turning it into just very sort of rudimentary, mundane marketing now. But then I hear that great origin story on Las Vegas radio day before yesterday, and it occurs to me that seems to be the secret sauce, if there is any, Sarah. I think is somehow finding new ways to say the same thing over and over again and build on the story as though it's this long form narrative that flows from interest in the characters and in the entertainment value of what it is you have to offer. And that could be funny. And in some cases, like Radiant Plumbing in Austin is a company that I think they got to about 40 million before Brad and Sarah sold the company. Very, very goofy and comedy oriented, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you look at, with Ken, the follow-up to that was the Sadie test. The second ad that Roy did for Ken was where he had his dog. It was this sort of magical realism story where Sadie, his dog, was behind his chair. And if somebody came in to apply to work for Gettle, we see if they passed the Sadie test. If the dog came over and befriended him, then they know that was the kind of person that could work there. Now, we all know in modern HR, I don't know exactly how that would work or legal, but it's a great story, right? So and if entertainment is the currency in a cluttered world where nobody wants to hear your selling messages, right? Entertainment becomes the currency, whether it's heartfelt or whether it's comedic or whatever. So, and Roy is a master at this stuff. He did it for Dewey Jenkins in North Carolina. It's a great campaign. He's done it very famously for Brian Scudamore at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. Is probably the biggest current Wizard success story that hasn't been usurped by, private equity. But then, having said that, though, it's interesting, I think, well, you didn't ask me to talk about private equity, though. So I don't know if I should.
You can talk about whatever you want. This is a podcast.
Well, I like the world better when more people have a seat at the table, but I also understand the exit parachute part of that, right? That's why it's interesting. Like I look at somebody like Cody Sanchez, what she's doing, double back around encouraging people. Let's, you get in, be your own boss, go buy a company and get skin in the game. That, the very first website I did in 2006 said, I like the world more when more people have a seat at the table. I think that's the American way. So private equity becomes a little bit at odds with that. Plus, as soon as, a couple of phenomena that I've come across with private equity, one is very often my big fat consulting fee on the marketing budget is the first thing they look at and go, well, we don't need that anymore, right? Very often I don't get to stick around with private equity. Sometimes, but not always. And then there have been a couple of times where, a client who I adore is like, hey, I love you, Ray, but this is where we go our separate ways so I can fatten up my EBITDA and get my payday. And me removing you from our budget helps me get where I need to be. And I get it. I get it. It doesn't feel good,
Yeah.
But I have a new client in Kansas City that is the first time I've engaged a client. We're inside our first year and they are the private equity. They have the one company and we're working on the second market now. And it's just, it's interesting. So the landscape is changing for sure. And so I think wherever there is disruption, there's an opportunity for innovation and I'm all about it. So I'm in it to win it. I have enough great clients, some of whom I've name dropped already on this interview, who are my ride/die clients, right? So past that, I'm up for whatever. Let's, these are interesting times to be living in. So let's go.
Yeah.
LFG.
Yeah, LFG, let's go. Yeah. I love that. And, yes, private equity is taking over the landscape and they're doing it in multiple industries, like a ton of industries. And it's just, does it make sense to us today? Maybe not at this moment, but sometimes it does make sense. And it's a really hard, and I know some business owners that struggle internally with like, do I sell? Do I not sell? And I'm like, well, what was your exit strategy? And they're like, well, we didn't plan an exit strategy. And I'm like, well, did you want to do this for forever? And they're like, well, we just didn't think of like leaving. And and so now that they have left, they're taking back their personal lives and they're like, well, what else can I do? And I think like that's the coolest thing about private equity taking over. It's like they can be happy, and not in the drowning moment of like the day to day, but they can figure out what their true passion is and continue their passion for people. Because I think a lot of you start a company thinking about like how you're going to support yourself. And then you have people that are involved because you hire them. And then it becomes a people and experience business because it all has always been in the beginning. You are the person and you are the experience. So, I think it's pretty cool.
I'm super interested in transgenerational businesses where we can get the kids to take over, but that's kind of fraud. That was sort of the impetus for Nuclear Family Business, the podcast that I've been kicking around a little bit. And then also employee stock option plans, ESOPs, where you can sell the company to the employees. Those are both real interesting things to me as well. But like I said, interesting times we live in, right?
Interesting times we live in, most definitely. Yeah. And if we could talk all day. Like literally, I could record with you all day. I mean, but I want to give our listeners even more value. So you are an expert brand strategist. 2025 is coming up. The times are changing. You have AI that can help you. You have partners like you that can really get out there. You have marketing spilling out the ears with the election and all of this crazy stuff going on. But like in 2025, what do you see for contractors? Like setting up their brand strategy, their marketing, like give me your future insights.
Yeah. So really, I should be asking you that question because I remember when we were in Denver a few months back and we were doing that master grad thing for Rapport, I was hanging on your every word about automation and AI, and I'm not an expert at that stuff. So I understand that that's a whole thing. And I think I have the benefit now of acknowledging that there are people in the world who are just going to be better at it than me, that I don't, I'm content to remain a strategist because I think there's some things about strategy and messaging that are not AI-able. Okay. I've plugged a lifetime's worth of ads for a client into AI just to train it and get it back. And it still lacks a little bit of that, in terms of the brand story. It still lacks a little bit. I think we all I think we're still in a little bit of I wouldn't call it a honeymoon phase, but there's this sort of beginning, we're still figuring out, but we can we can kind of tell when we're reading something that was generated by AI. And the thing that's fascinating to me is now there is an AI tool to make your AI look less like AI. Crazy. Right?
Yeah.
So, in terms of what I think 2025 and beyond holds, again, interesting times we live in, and automation will certainly create things. And again, my clients teach me a lot of this stuff, and we all have things to teach one another. We all have things to learn, right? So I'm still a student of a lot of that, and kind of in the spirit of who, not how. I don't think I'll learn how to do all that stuff. I'll just find the people that are good at it, and I'll align myself and my clients in that regard. But to me, there are some things that will not change, and that's the ability to have a story to rally around, and the ability, that's a very human thing, to be able to engage as storyteller and subject and pull that story out and polish it and present it. I'm not worried that AI is going to replace me in my lifetime. Maybe in the next guy's lifetime, maybe in my kid's lifetime. But for now, I feel good that my place in these communities I get to serve, all right, is I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and then just keep my thumb on the pulse of where technology evolves. And in some cases, it's the wax and wane. So I'll give you a great example. Wizard of Ad success story is built on radio and this delicious part of your brain that processes sound. It's why you memorize lyrics to songs and complex melodies that you never sat down to memorize, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the same part of the brain that creates anticipation and delight, right? So none of that's going to change, even if the vehicles may evolve. And I mean, the obvious thing would be, is it more terrestrial? It's less and less about terrestrial radio and more about alternate forms of delivery through podcasts and through social media and right? And through streaming. So still, I think the power of words and the sound of the human voice will always be at the center of it. So as somebody who has devoted the last 20 years of my life to be good at that, it's about taking those same core principles forward and just applying them in new channels and new forums and outlets.
I love it. Yeah, that's the human connection, is people will always have that connection to a human voice in their heart. What is the saying that Roy has? If you win the hearts, you win their minds, or something like that.
So I don't know if it's a Roy quote, but some real smart guy once said, "Win the heart and the mind will follow." May have been Roy. I don't know.
Because in one of his books, he might have quoted it. I don't know, but that's a great.
Yeah.
That's the truth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there actually, if you go to, I think Roy's Monday morning memo was originally sent out as a fax to tell you how long it's been around. It was before email, right? But every Monday for his career, his life, every Monday he's either via fax or via email. And now, he it's audio that's on Audible. It's everywhere now, right? But he's pushed some sort of idea out into the world every Monday via the Monday morning memo. If you go to mondaymorningmemo.com, there's the random quote generator. Some of those quotes are of Roy, and 20 years ago, he had almost 1,000 quotes when I first went to work for him. So I don't even know how many he's got now.
Yeah, he's got a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, okay, so you have a new book coming out. If for those that are interested, we're going to wrap this up. Go buy this book. It's a really great book. It's called No Place Like Home Services. You can get it on Amazon. I would buy the printed copy. I don't know if you've done Audible yet, but I love marketing books because I like to write in them.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe I will send someone my written copy and you'll get my ideas.
We're getting at that. Oh, that's a fun idea. You could do something fun with that. That could be the spark of a really cool thing. You should dig in on that.
Okay.
We are working on the Audible. Audible will be out by Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and if you ever need me to record for you, I will definitely read the book for you.
Okay. Good. Yeah. I'd listen to you read it.
Yeah. Well, Eric, do you have any questions? Because you've been kind of quiet.
No, I've just been thinking about how much I enjoy working with the Wizard of Ads.
Well, thank you, man. I'm not sure, so like I said, it's a real eclectic group. I name drop a handful of the partners, older and newer, who are really neat guys for sure. That's the best part of it. Whether I've really been blessed through so Wizard of Ads is this real eclectic group of people. I'm, through Rapport Leadership and the Warrior Circle. I'm really blessed to have a lot of neat people in my world. Yeah. Ryan Shute has turned me on to Celebrity Branding Agency, which is Nick Nanton's deal, and I'm joining up with that. Just neat guys in there too. And Ryan, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Ryan is writing the follow-up to Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be awesome.
Ryan gave me his +1. We were at the Wizard Partner meeting. He goes, "Hey man, I'm going out to do this thing in LA. I want you to come with me and check it out." And so Ryan and I, we haven't worked on clients together really. We're about to work on our first client in LA together. And I take that back. I brought him on when he was very first a Wizard Partner, before he found his rhythm with the trades and everything. He was really more trainer. So I brought him on to be my wingman on a seminar I did at Wizard Academy. And then one of the guys in the room was a client of mine. And so we signed Ryan up to help with the training and onboarding. He did training. We'll just help some things like that. But this is the first time we've actually worked on a client together. It's the one that we're about to roll out in LA together, which is a really neat woman-owned business, electric. Well, I probably shouldn't say too much about it because it's still in the incubator stage. But you're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. You'd love it the most as soon as we get it out. But Celebrity Branding Agency went and did that, and so yeah, I'm just it's just between Wizards and CBA and Rapport, just some neat people, and it's interesting all the connections that we get to make, because there's so many just neat people in the world doing good for others, and Sarah, I read something on your social recently about, it was something about the superpower. Is the superpower helping other people find their superpower, right? And it's like, there's plenty of money and business in this for all of us, right? And, one of the things that I'm just super grateful about and in the people is that when we acknowledge that, there's just so much abundance, right? And my fear for the world and for where I've been and maybe where I've had an opportunity to grow along is when I'm in scarcity, right? Or there's not enough for everybody, then it brings out the worst in us. But as long as we're kind of in that abundant mindset and just help other people, one of my truisms through all of this has been, as long as I do what's best for my clients, the money always finds me, right? And once I took that leap, it's like, well, when you don't make it about the money, you make the most money. Isn't that interesting?
Yep. It's all about the people.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Good stuff. Okay, so we'll wrap this up. This has been a wonderful podcast, and I'd love to have you back on next year to hear more about the book and to your endeavors. Eric, you want to wrap this up for us?
Yeah. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Ray, thank you for being a guest on the show. For those listening, if you haven't already, please leave us a rating and review. We appreciate the feedback. It helps us get better and put out better content for you. So appreciate you all for tuning in to another episode of The Trademark, and we will.
And that wraps up another episode of The Trademark, where we bridge the worlds of the trades and marketing, one story at a time. We can't wait to see you next time. Thank you to the trades for giving back big, loving big, and taking massive action. Don't forget to join us next time for more engaging conversations and innovative ideas. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and share it with your colleagues and friends in the trades and marketing. Your support means the world to us. Stay connected with us off the air by following us on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts and get your feedback. Until next time, keep making your mark in the trades. Thank you for listening to The Trademark. Goodbye for now, and remember, we're with the trades for the trades.